Spokane listens when business talks. Welcome to Business Talks, the region's only local business talk show with your host, Ryan McNeice. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU and Well Dressed Walrus. Now, let's get down to business with Business Talks.
Welcome to Business Talks. I'm Ryan McNeice, and we're here in the studio with Stephanie Regalado, the editor-in-chief of Spokane, Coeur Living magazine, and also the host of the podcast SheSays. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Putting me in this seat.
Yeah,
again.
In the other
Kent
seat.
Gave me this seat once before.
Well, I get to ask the questions this time.
Yeah, go for it.
But why I'm so excited, Stephanie, to have you on is my overall interest in doing business talks is what makes the person. Whether we're talking about business, whether we're talking about art, whether we're talking about nonprofits, any type of organization, there's a lot that goes into making the person and the decisions that have guided them, serendipity at times, to be in places where you are. So I thought your story would be really interesting to talk about.
It's funny, I had a meeting earlier today and we were talking about productive professionals and how I found the more people talk about themselves, the less productive they actually are. And then I had to laugh because I was like, I'm going on Ryan's podcast.
You're like, that's exactly what you're going to do.
And I'm going to be talking about
But we're going to make it productive.
Okay, good.
So,
Phew.
I think your current position as editor-in-chief of Spokane, Coeur Living, a very popular magazine here. Tell us about that, but then I do want to go back a little bit, and or a lot, if you will, and figure out what roads you took to be where you are at today. But tell us what that role is as editor-in-chief of Spokane, Coeur Living.
Well, it's amazing because so much, and I think the spokesman puts a lot out on how they've had to dwindle things down, and they're very public about laying off people or letting them go or buying out contracts. But it really is print. It doesn't matter your title, you're going to do a lot of different things. Right. And maybe the kind of sexy look to editor-in-chief is you're not working in the coal mines quite as much as I am. So I do everything from writing all those cover lines. I write contents. I write a lot of the little pieces. I work with about 30 contributors every month, 30 to 40, sometimes 45 contributors coming up with content ideas. I have 0 staff, so everyone I work with is a contract.
Okay, so independent contractor.
Independent contractor.
That's interesting in and of itself, to put the whole thing together. And,
Yes.
and obviously, with that title, you are in charge of making sure it goes
Right.
out and it's done right. But there's a little stress involved with that.
There's definitely stress. So before we started this, went live with this, you and I were talking about how the blue collar, white collar, I think that should just all be debunked because I don't know that there's a lot of difference. Hard work is hard work, and it often feels like it's not very glamorous what I do.
Well, you know, Stephanie, I think that is a good point. And while I'm driving to work, I recently saw this construction site where these guys and gals were strapped in to do a bunch of framing 3 stories up. And I thought, you know what, that is hard work, and that obviously that type of labor you massively respect.
Absolutely.
However, I'm also tuning into what you're saying as well, that the stress of sometimes professional services, it might look glamorous, but you still are in the ditches to a certain extent. And I think that's what you're explaining.
Well, and not often in any position are people pulling together their work portfolio of what they've done that entire month and sending it out to 100,000 people to
scrutinize.
Every month. To read. And to give feedback. And I mean, not to say that it's not a great honor to be in the position that I'm in. It's definitely an honor. And I'm more of a filtering system for content. I get to decide what 100,000 readers see every month. And I think that I trust my filtering system. Every now and then a reader will write in, and I appreciate that very much because they'll tweak or challenge what I put out there, and I'm not a one-woman show. I always say we are Spokane, we are Coeur d'Alene, and we are this magazine.
Multiple facets.
Absolutely, and the work that I can do is only as good as the amount of content and people that I'm interacting with and sifting through for potential.
So this is where I think I would like to go back a bit. the skills, the person that you are, what it takes to put a magazine or a product out like this, obviously is not built overnight. No, the skills that you've acquired through a lifetime, where does the story of Stephanie Regalado, where does it start? Well,
I think the one skill that's allowed me to be where I am is insanity, because it's funny because I have often college students or even people that move to Spokane or people that are starting to write, and they talk about dreaming about contributing for the magazine and wanting an opportunity, and I'll tell you how I got my start. So I'm very open to that. But often, I don't think people want to do the work.
If they understood what the work actually was.
What it was. I don't know. There aren't, and I'm not discrediting the potential in people, but there are late nights. There's a lot of stress every month. I'm critiqued
and
on multiple
levels. And you have to essentially
levels.
start over every month.
Yeah, and then you still say, oh.
Final product went out, and then you're thinking, I got to go do it again.
Yeah, exactly. And that's old news to me, but I try to celebrate with the community at the same time with that. But it's funny because, and then when I reach out back to people to give them an opportunity, they'll say, oh, I'm not sure I'm ready yet. Well, heck, I've not been ready for one single step I took.
I like the way you're describing that, though, because you still took the leap. You
could give it an opportunity and potentially fail, and then you'll know. But you bow out instantly when you say you're not ready. We do not know the power that we have inside of us. Not that I didn't have fear, but
I don't think there's anybody that doesn't have fear. It's can you overcome the fear?
Exactly. And I just try to think of fear as being one of those things that's bringing me to a higher level of alertness. And try to sift through that. Not that it's something that I need to cower from or power through. Like, what is happening inside of me that's giving me a higher alertness and awareness to this potential scenario? So I try to sift through what that is, and challenge is really the only thing that makes us stronger and gets us to level up. I have kids that play video games. They're always joking about leveling up in life. And but I was in a situation where I was in college. I was doing some little writing project. No, I wasn't.
And you were a collegiate athlete as well.
Well, I didn't end up playing. That's a long story too, because so my best friend and I decided to sign on at North Idaho College. I was going to row for WSU, and she was going to play volleyball at North Idaho College, and I had received offers for volleyball and basketball for NIC, and it was right next to the beach.
Right. Pretty good spot there in Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah, nice little spot. So I said, hey, well, let's do this. So we both signed on, and during our 2-week training camp before school started, we really started we didn't admit it till one day we were laying on the gym floor looking up at the ceiling, and it had, those gymnasium floors, they all have the same, thousands of holes in those ceiling panels. And I said, Anne, I have a confession to make. And she sat up, and she looked at me, and she goes, I have a confession. You go first. And I said, I don't think I can do this. I don't think that there's one thing that I want to be a part of here. And it just
didn't feel right.
It didn't feel right to me. The dynamics didn't feel right. Wasn't really jiving with the existing team or the coach or his relationship with them. I'm super stubborn. I didn't love the idea of I had to get we were in line to get shots that day for whatever immunizations, or I wasn't even sure what was going on. We had to take it was very regimented, what we ate, when we ate, a bunch of supplements that we all had to take. And I was like, this is just not my style. But we had already signed on, so we could not play anywhere else for a year. And
really? Almost as a non-compete and or collegiate rules. So.
Yeah, it's collegiate rule.
Yeah.
Once you break that, you can't.
But again, challenges like this at a young age to overcome some very difficult situations, difficult decisions.
Well, it was weird. So I went back home, and I thought, there's no way I could go home either. That just felt so anticlimactic. You graduate from high school, you're going on to do this. I was a major athlete. I was an all-state basketball player and leader. I played volleyball and basketball, and had every trophy you could have, and a much success with that. And it just felt like flat, and I couldn't see forward. So I had to get out of the area. That's all I knew. And I ended up doing some research, found a nanny agency on the East Coast, applied through them, and was connected to a family within a few weeks, and zipped off to Connecticut, to East Haddam, Connecticut.
To be a nanny.
Took
the leap.
Traveled a ton with them, which, looking back, was more valuable, I think, than
And the
college.
experience and the challenges that were put in front of you.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, I think we all can tell those stories of the silver lining. If you looked at the North Idaho experience, you might look at that and just say, oh, that didn't work out. Well, most likely it didn't work out for a reason. Because
I chose. I was an active participant in that not working out. So
right.
it was,
But the silver lining was the other opportunities that came up.
And then I was a nanny I was gone for a year, and then I returned home and became a nanny in Spokane for families who also traveled a lot, which was just brilliant. And I would fit in school around the travel calendar. And then when I had my first daughter, I was doing some little writing projects, but not really working a lot. I was still nannying. And then I had my son, Christopher, who was a senior this year, and I just needed more than...
This is also an outstanding athlete.
Yeah. I needed to feed my mind more, so I was just looking like, what am I going to do with my life? I'm great at mothering, was totally dedicated to them, but realized I didn't want to leave them, which is very tricky.
Yeah, in terms of balancing both.
Balance, yes. So what can I do to still be active in my own passions and desires and but still be a good mom? And there was an ad in the newspaper from Byron King, who owned Nostalgia magazine at the time, an in-construction newspaper and a sporting newspaper as well. He was looking for an editor to begin a new little publication on home remodeling, and an editor.
Yeah.
He was looking for an editor to start this. So I called people had always said I was a great writer.
I don't know if I have that on my resume, but
there was no,
but why not?
Yeah. So nanny, I wrote stories every day about the kids for the families, and they thought they were brilliant. But so I called him, and he said, hey, I think based on your personality, you should come in. I met him the very next morning, and he offered me the job. He said, bring in any little writing samples you have, little writing samples.
Yeah, you like those stories.
Yeah, he's like, well, you're not a bad writer, and I love your personality, so let's give this a go.
But you know what? I call that is it's obviously showing up, being willing to do it, but also it's the social intelligence. And clearly he identified immediately the it factor. This individual has social intelligence. Let's give it a shot.
Right.
That's what I love about that story.
Yeah.
So that was the first editor job.
Yeah, so then I was the editor of this little publication, and I was writing all the content back then. It's just a souped-up name for the writer of all content.
You're like editor, writer,
yes.
I'll clean the bathrooms. What else do you need?
I've always done everything.
Yeah.
And then at one point he wanted to offload In Construction newspaper. I had been working with him for a couple of years, and he asked me, I was 26 at the time, asked if I would be open to coming on as publisher and buying him out of the magazine, the construction magazine. And during the time with the Home Remodeling Guide, I also took on writing projects for Nostalgia magazine, and then they asked me to be a columnist for All Sport newspaper. And so I just started getting all these little writing gigs.
But one thing led to the next.
Yeah.
It's that almost like the Alchemist book in the sense that you don't know necessarily where you're going. I mean, you have an idea of where you're going sometimes. Yeah. But when you get there, there's many more opportunities.
I didn't see it coming. And a lot of times, I shared a little earlier with you before we started that I feel like it's a survival thing. What can I do with the circumstances that I'm in to honor the other aspects that are important in my life?
What do I need to do?
What do I need to do? And then what skill set do I have that I can monetize, I guess. So it was creating content. And I did become publisher of In Construction newspaper for a few years.
But there's also where, when you indicated earlier that overcoming fear, it's a little easier to have a push, if you will, because of these needs, family, et cetera. You're like, okay, I'm fearful, here I go. Got to do it anyway. Yeah,
someone had made a comment about, why don't you just work at McDonald's or get a cleaning job somewhere and work around your husband's schedule. And we need those positions and they're very valuable, but there was something that I needed that was more than just an action for $1.
Well, I think it's obvious that you are absolutely drawn to the creative spirit, and that's why you kept being drawn to these positions.
Right.
Let's take a short little break and come right back and continue to talk about your story.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, this is Kurt Stockwell with Well Dressed Walrus. We are a local website design and development company here in Spokane. What we do is build beautiful, usable websites for local businesses. A website needs to be beautiful, it needs to be usable for your users, your customers, and yourself. Contact us anytime. We'd love to talk with you about your online marketing.
The economy is getting stronger, banks are lending again, and interest rates are at historic lows. Now is a great time to buy your dream home. The caring and knowledgeable professionals at Homes for You have been helping people just like you for over 20 years. They take the time to listen to what you want and will help you find just the right home in Washington or Idaho. Real estate is what we do at Homes for You, 928-5782, or visit online at homes4uspokane.com.
Welcome back to Business Talks. I'm here in the studio with Stephanie Regalado, and we're chatting about all of the twists and turns and that life brings. But what's exciting, I think, about your story, as we've been talking about in the first half of the show, is at each step, you've really taken the opportunity to look at your needs of your family and look at actually your personal needs in terms of professional interest, and you've gone for it. So you were at In Construction magazine, and we were talking about that. Where did you go from there?
Soon after that, sadly, my husband and I were going through a divorce, and that was just a crazy time. I had been doing a lot of, during In Construction, Vince Bozzi had written something that caught my eye, and so I sent him a message, because I really do believe in interacting and engaging with people, especially when you appreciate it. A lot of people are drawn more when they're not appreciative of something to act, but I tend to be driven by things that bring me alive a little bit or make me think deeper. And I sent him a note saying how I appreciated what he had said. I don't even remember what it was.
Obviously, it was moving, though.
Yeah. It was probably the last thing he wrote that was moving. Just kidding. He'll never watch this. But he wrote back and said, "Hey, I've been watching you. You look like you're a force to reckon with. I know how the publishing industry goes. If you ever find you need a little extra something, let me know. I always have projects. I'd love to work with you."
Yeah.
And instead of saying, "Okay, I'll check in with you later," I said, "I'm wide open right now."
What do you got?
Because that's just my nature. Like, this great glossy
print.
He had several. I don't know if he had the little magazines then, but he had Spokane, Coeur, Alene Living magazine then, and it was just this gorgeous publication. It's so dreamy. And so he hired me to write this legacy series where businesses can pay to have their legacy written. And I wrote, and he gave me the whole project. So I wrote, in addition to all the other work I was doing, I wrote 24 legacy stories for that issue.
For one issue? For one issue.
Oh,
okay. I was thinking
it was just one feature. No, they were very successful. I wrote all 24 of them. They were brilliant. Oh, I mean, the response was brilliant, just because I tend to connect well with people.
The writing was brilliant, too, though. The writing.
By then, I have to tell you the reason why, when people remark that I'm a decent writer at all, it has zero to do with me, aside from the fact that I'm coachable. And that's one of the reasons why I was an all-state basketball player.
Willing to learn.
I asked my editors along the way, Mark, who was the editor of Nostalgia magazine at the time, I would ask him for feedback after I turned something in. And I could tell he hesitated once a little bit, and I was like, oh, wait. And I sat down. And I said, I need to hear it all.
Yeah, let me know.
Please, because I don't want to be putting this out. I can't be proud of something that I know that there may be faults with it. And he said, oh, you tend to use cliches. And so I'm super anti-cliche now.
But sometimes they work. Sometimes they're good.
I don't know. I don't know. Just don't ever say the floodgates open. That's all I know.
Okay. I might try to fit that in here by the end, though.
So I listened and I tweaked things, and I was very in touch with him about helping me grow as a writer. I was never trained as a writer.
But it challenged you.
As a writer.
It challenged you. Forced you to
challenge.
Change.
Yeah. Loved whittling all the riffraff down to the true heart of the story. And so people responded very well. The advertisers that I had written for, I had this whole folder that I collected with all their love notes about. It's their legacy. It's their life business.
Absolutely.
And when you can capture that, it just means so much. They invest so much of their time into
and
that.
they
like
can
we
give
do.
you the thumbs up that you did capture that.
Yeah, and they just think it was brilliant. Some of them were into tears about how well it captured just the whole essence.
Floodgates open of tears. Something like that.
Which reminds me of a funny story. When I first started working for In Construction newspaper, before I became a publisher, there was this guy who owned this big tractor business. I don't even remember, somewhere around here. And so, what was his name? Byron sent me out to cover the story. And I walk in, I'm this young 25-year-old, skirt heels, whatever. And he said, "Where's the writer?" The owner of the tractor business said, "Where's the writer?" And I said, "Well, actually, I'm the writer." And he goes, "What do you know about tractors?" And I said, "Actually, I'm hoping you know."
You're like, I think I'm interviewing you.
Yeah.
You tell me.
I don't need to know
story.
a thing about the tractors.
Yeah, teach me.
Because you're the expert, correct?
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, of course I am." And I said,
Here we go.
he's like, "Well, I just don't know how you're going to be able to capture this if you're not really familiar with the industry." And I said, "Let's just give it a whirl. I'll do the interview. I'll write it, send you a draft. If you don't like it."
If you don't think I captured it,
Yeah, if you
let
don't,
me know.
Right. And we'll sign another writer,
Mhm.
maybe someone in boots or something
Yeah.
with mud on them. I
Yeah,
don't know.
that looks the part, whatever that part
Yeah, I
is
don't even
supposed to
know,
be. Yeah.
right? I could drive a tractor in a
Yeah.
skirt. I know I could. And he wrote back and he said, "I apologize. I've never been more wrong about an instant judgment, and no one's captured my business the way you did."
But that's another perfect example, though.
Yeah.
If you didn't have experiences like that, where you
Yeah.
had to walk in and immediately know you were
Yeah.
being challenged, or
Mhm.
he's implying you're not the right fit for this.
Yeah.
Imagine the challenges that you're dealing with now at Spokane,
Yeah.
Coeur d'Alene Living at the levels that you are.
Right.
It seems like every piece of a person's trajectory, if you will, or life, it
Yeah.
creates your readiness at the right time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone now at Bossy Media puts me on the phone or on an email with someone. Plus, I don't want to lose anyone ever. I don't even care if they are coming at me totally on fire with bazookas
But
drawn.
if they're discontent with something, is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Or-
absolutely. If someone's super unhappy about something, any little thing, even if I think it's the most ridiculous thing on the planet, I enjoy turning that around.
And resolving it.
I enjoy resolving it, but not only resolving it, but earning the respect through that.
I think
the
I
mutual
got a
respect.
new career for you, mediator.
Well, and I did
Right?
consider that for a while.
Well, because I
Mhm.
think it would fit.
Yeah, I have been a mediator for many different things.
Yeah,
throughout
you're
my
like
life
you're
as
like
well.
I actually do that every day.
I do. There's a few
it's just
times
not
where
the
I bow
title.
out. Like
Yeah.
I'm saying no now to this, but yeah. So I finished that project, and then I was going through a divorce. Became an executive director of a nonprofit as a twist. But part of the reason they hired me against PhD candidates, when I actually did not even finish my college degree, and they knew that, was I pitched starting an industry-specific magazine,
Mm-hmm.
and finding the advertisers that would support the endeavor and also pay in part for my salary.
Well, again,
So
though, I think
they hired me.
You know what, though? I think at every step, I think you're doing
Yeah.
a good job of explaining. There's one thing to say resume, and there's one thing
Yeah.
to have line items on
Yeah.
the curriculum vitae that says
Mhm.
PhD or what have you.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, in my opinion, when we're hiring attorneys or otherwise,
Yeah.
it comes down to this. It comes down
Right.
to who are you and
Yeah.
what have you been through? Why are you here?
Right.
What do you bring to the table? And again,
Yeah.
that social intelligence. And I think, as you described, when I think it was Nostalgia Magazine was the first stop where you'd indicate editor. I don't have editor experience on a line on the resume, but what
Yeah.
you had was, I want this job, and I will make it work, and
Yeah.
I'm willing to learn.
Yeah.
And I would imagine every day at Bossy Media and or at Spokane Coeur d'Alene, you're learning. I know I do. I learn every day.
Yeah. Well, and the weird thing is I'm not actually an employee. They are a client.
Yeah,
Of
you're
mine.
an independent contractor.
I'm an independent contractor.
Yep.
I own my own business. I have owned my own business since I had in construction newspaper.
Which gives you a lot more flexibility. And if we could, because we don't have a lot of time left,
Yeah.
I wanted to throw in a couple of those, many of the things that you're working on, but one of them
Okay.
with Spokane Talks is you are the
Yes.
host of the podcast, SheSays.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that show and was excited to bring you on
Yes,
when we
thank you.
chatted about a year ago, because immediately when I was talking to you, it's so obvious that these issues and the plethora of different stories you're already
Yeah.
bringing to the table. Tell us about that, though. Why you're interested in that, and why these stories just keep on coming.
Well, I came on to Bossy Media after being an executive director for a while. I was going to make a change, and then I actually was publisher of Nostalgia Magazine for a little while and was changing out of that as well. And I contacted Vince and just said, hey, because we'd always worked together that way. If you have anything coming up that's more solid or more time, I'm open right now to opportunity. And so he offered in construction, or no, oh gosh, here I go, Catalyst, Inland Business Catalyst to me.
I really like
so
that.
then I came on as editor of Catalyst, and a couple months later, he brought me in his office. He goes, we've been toying around this idea of starting a women's magazine. And I was like, shut up. I've got this. Like, well, I was thinking about offering.
You're like, look at my resume. It's right there. I got this.
And I've always been, from playing on sports teams and girls with women and admiring women throughout my life, a lot of strong women, and having a family that raised us all equally.
Right.
I had to work in the ditch, and I had to do dishes, and so did my brothers. So it's never been something that I didn't think that I could do certain things, but I also want women to be able to come together and support one another, because I had experienced some of those unsavory characteristics sometimes that women can experience with one another. And so I was so passionate about the women's magazine and coming together authentically. And that's one of the reasons that I've been so raw in my writing, because when people say I'm amazing, it actually makes me uncomfortable. Because to me, it feels as though, and I think humans do this, we're constantly trying to like decide where we're falling in the midst of all
identity or something.
Yeah, identities and hierarchies of it all. And I'm right there with everyone else. I don't fangirl on anyone, because I see them as, I'm interested and intrigued by humans and the things that they do, but I don't feel like there's anyone that's elevated above where I am in my life, and I don't feel like there's anyone below where I am in my life.
We're all just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say that we are all in the same human, dancing along this spectrum of human possibility at any one given time, and it's the same human spectrum. We're all on it. We're just all at different places on it. So it's really important for me to dig into the heart of it and share in a very raw way the realities of life, the struggles, not to lead with it like, everything's
Here's
awful.
my story. But
yeah,
I think what you're saying is where your life is at times paralleling these challenges, struggles, and successes of these other women, professionals and otherwise.
Yeah, and the only caveat to that with the way I cover things is I need it to have a resolution. I need it to go full circle, because you have to make sure you don't leave people depleted or and you can't just dump something on them and leave them with no resolution. So the stories that I covered in the Women's Magazine, even on SheSays, the podcast, we're talking about things that have happened through life and such, but we're talking about perseverance and how we got back up and on our feet again. And I think that's really the important thing for people to see. See that reality that we're all equal regardless of what we're doing, and where we are in our stages of life. We all face challenges and heartbreaks and victories of different magnitudes, and we all work, and there is a light at the end of every one of those challenges.
Well, I think you touched on this earlier too, that engagement. You'd indicated that you were never afraid to engage with people that you felt like the opportunity was there.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so special about what you're doing with SheSays and with the magazine as well, but specifically on SheSays, I think you are definitely taking that opportunity to engage with the different guests and with our community to say, hey, I've either experienced this, they're either experiencing this, or if I haven't experienced it, I can definitely relate to it. So I'm so excited to have you continue to tell those stories.
Thank you.
And just appreciate everything you're doing here in our community. I wish we had a little longer, but I guess we're going to have to call it. But thank you so much, Stephanie.
My pleasure.
So,
Thanks for having me.
Business Talks. See you next time. Thanks again.
Business Talks is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Ask a question, recommend a guest, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. Business Talks is brought to you by our friends at STCU and Well Dressed Walrus. Business Talks wishes you good business and a good day.